was a college student at Temple University. In 1967, Prabhupada came to visit my college, and he had a few devotees with him, and in those days, they used to dance in a circle and chant Hare Krishna. When Prabhupada spoke, I was so non-conscious that I don't remember a lot of the things he said, but I did remember that he said, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, and no meat eating. And I was thinking, this is 1967, and this person is preaching no intoxication, no illicit sex in the middle of the university campus. He must have integrity. He must not be looking just for money or followers, but really presenting something genuine, because he was going against the current of the material world and what the young students were into. So even though I didn't have a intense experience with Prabhupada, I always carried that feeling of respect that I had from that first meeting. Next time I saw Prabhupada was after I had been serving in the temple for about 6 months and was somewhat purified. Everyone always used to say, Prabhupada this, Prabhupada that, and I was worried when I see Prabhupada, what will I feel? Will I feel anything? And so in those days, in Brooklyn, New York, we used to have 2 buildings. One was the temple, and one was Prabhupada's quarters. And the word got out, Prabhupada's coming, and we all ran downstairs. You know, the last nail was hammered in, as always, just in time. And Prabhupada got out of the car, and I had never seen anything like it in my life. He was like he was floating. And I remember him turning around, facing us with folded hands, and with a look of humility and love and compassion that I had never seen before in my life. And I just started weeping in the street. And I was realizing this person is not going to cheat me. And he didn't. After I had been serving about 6 months, Prabhupada came. I joined in December. Prabhupada came in the summer to perform initiation, and my name was submitted. And I didn't know anything. And I wanted, because they usually gave a name that was like the first letter of your name. So I wanted the name Balaram, because I was Bob. And so anyway, one person went after another, and the Prabhupada said, what are the 4 regulations, and what else? And then he would hand them their beads. And a lady had just gone before me, and she couldn't even speak. She was crying, and Prabhupada just went like that and gave her the beads and told her her name. And then it was my turn, and I came up and I reached for my beads, and Prabhupada pulled them back, just like this. And I thought, oh boy, he must see something. Something's not right. But then somebody whispered in my ear, right hand. I said, oh. And I reached for the beads with my right hand, and he gave them to me. And my name wasn't Balaram. It was a beautiful name of Brajendranandana, which I'm so fortunate to have. But at the time, I didn't know anything. And so that's pretty much how the initiation went. We were called van devotees. We went around all over, distributing from city to city, living in a van, distributing Prabhupada's books. And every night we would listen to this tape of Prabhupada singing in 1969 on the disappearance day of his spiritual master in a very, very heartfelt way. His prayers to the spiritual master and a few other things. And we would, every night, we'd go to sleep listening to it. And then a letter came from Srila Prabhupada, and it was addressed to the Sankirtan leaders there, and Prabhupada wrote in the letter, "I am always thinking of those boys in the vans." So that made it a whole different experience. Every night we go to sleep listening to the tape, thinking of Prabhupada and knowing that he was thinking of us. Even in the middle of nowhere in America, middle of America, we'd be sleeping in our van. And the thing about Prabhupada is that he had so much majesty. He was majestic. And sometimes some of the leaders would present that as the fact that he was heavy. But actually, Shruti Kirti, who you've probably interviewed already, he said the thing that he felt most about Prabhupada was that he was the kindest person he ever met. I was in his room because we were a party of devotees that were just about to go out on the road. So they let us come into Prabhupada's room that day. And a few things happened in there. First of all, he was mixing some medicines, and everything he did was so magical. It was like you couldn't take your eyes off it. It was so perfect. Everything, every little gesture was full of I don't know, Shakti, but it was, he's from the spiritual world, so what he's doing is not ordinary. Even a little thing like pouring something into a bottle became an experience to watch. But I remember different things he talked about in the room that day. One devotee asked him, Prabhupada, will you come to Chicago? And Prabhupada, as if he never really heard the question, or which I'm sure he did hear, but he said, are you convinced about the urgent necessity for Krishna consciousness in your life? Only then can you preach. So that was it. Are you convinced of the urgent necessity of Krishna consciousness in your life? Only then can you preach. And it makes sense, because unless we're realizing the urgent necessity, how can we realize the urgent necessity for someone else? And then someone asked him about selling records, and he said, don't sell records, sell books. And he said, somehow or other get them to take a book and to utter the word Krishna. And then the last thing I remember in the room that day was somebody asked a question and he responded by saying, he quoted a verse by Rupa Goswami, and he said, first make them Krishna conscious, then give them the rules and regulations. I later on took advantage of that when I ran a Gurukul in the 1990s. And with the children, we had that mood. Make it fun, make them enjoy Krishna consciousness, and not impose so many rules and regulations on them that it would become averse to Krishna consciousness. It was a very successful school, actually, but that principle we applied in it. I just remember that Prabhupada was very loving, and even though like he used to joke sometimes about how we Westerners were so uncultured, and we're like monkeys, but he loved his monkeys, and he put up with so much and tolerated so much, even criticism from others, in the name of helping his disciples. And I think that was it. It was what motivated people who met him only once to be ready to give their life, was that they felt his love, that he really cared about them. And like I said, he was our hero. You know, sometimes it's said that about great Mahabhagavats that you shouldn't talk so much about their stories, it's their philosophy, their specialities, but actually the stories about Prabhupada were part of his speciality. We weren't so learned philosophically. but it was his charisma, his amazing. He was funny. He was powerful, but he was also very soft. Once in Kennedy Airport, I was there. Everybody was sitting around Prabhupada as he was about to take off. And the temple president, Rupanuga, came in and yelled out, "The airport officials are complaining that there's too much commotion. So all the devotees have to leave." So all the devotees got up and started to leave, including Srila Prabhupada. And finally Rupanuga said, "Oh, no, not you, Prabhupada." Prabhupada was thinking, "I'm a devotee, if they're going to leave, I got to leave." That was a certain side of him that you would see every now and then, very childlike, very sweet. And he had to be everything, because he was all we had. Like I said, in the beginning we didn't have all the books, but we had Prabhupada. And he captured us completely. Once in Mayapur, he was speaking, I think it was 1975, and he said, "All of you have come from so many places all over the world, so many lakhs of dollars have been spent. This is all the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." And then Prabhupada went like this. And we were all, you could hear a pin drop for about 2 minutes. We didn't know how to react, what to do, because this is our spiritual master, and we know he wasn't sleeping, and we weren't familiar with the ecstatic symptoms of devotees, and so Prabhupada was there like that for a short time. And then one devotee had the presence of mind to sing, "Namo Vishnu Padaya," Prabhupada, Hare Krishna. He came out, and later on they asked him about it, and he was very shy about it. The best day of every year was the day that we could glorify Prabhupada. I remember in 1976, I was with this godbrother, Gauranga. He's like a demigod. And we were standing in the parking lot waiting for the cars to start emptying out and come in, and we were going to distribute books. And I said, Gauranga, one day people are going to be asking us, what was it like when Srila Prabhupada was here? And sure enough, people are asking, what was it like? It was a very special time. It was, like I said, Prabhupada was our hero. And we would do anything. In our vans, we'd bathe in the snow. We'd go in the subways and make announcements, things I wouldn't even dream of doing now. We used to go out in the subway cars, and every time the train would stop, we'd make an announcement and then go around and give out little books and collect. And it wasn't easy to deal with your mind and senses and then go out and approach people all day, trying to get them to distribute a book. In my book distribution, I was very fortunate. I used to distribute on the basis of something I would read in the book that I thought people could relate to, because I wanted them to hear Prabhupada's words. But I found this one picture in the Bhagavad-gita of the 5 horses running wild in the senses. I sold so many books based on that picture. I would say to people, these are the senses, and the reins is the mind, the driver is the intelligence, and he's lost control. Just like in your own life, you see going on like that. I say the person in the back is the soul. And when the soul becomes awakened, the intelligence controls the senses. And so Prabhupada said the pictures would sell the books. And sure enough, that so many books went out just based on that picture. I also would go around college dorms. We'd sneak around in the dormitories selling Krishna books. And I would read something, I'd say, just listen to this. And I said, and I still remember what I would read. When Krishna walked on the bank of the Yamuna, he was seen nicely decorated with tilak on his head. He was garlanded with different kinds of forest flowers, and his body was smeared by the pulp of sandalwood and tulsi leaves. Being pleased by the humming sound of the bees, Krishna would play his flute. And together anyway, it went on like that, but it was so sweet, and that people bought books based on hearing that passage from the Krishna book. So it was a very sweet time to be able to distribute books on the basis of the books. That's what Prabhupada really asked us to do. He said, lie to some and not to others, how will that help you become Brahminical? He said, there is sufficient merit in our books that if you simply describe them sincerely to anyone, they will purchase. He said, that art you must develop, not the art of lying. Prabhupada was once explaining that Krishna doesn't need our offerings, fruits and flowers and bhoga. What he wants is our feelings. And then Prabhupada recited some words, and while he said it, he started weeping. He said, I am most fallen and rotten, but I have brought these things for you. Please accept. And he just started weeping and weeping, teaching us the proper mood of worship, the ideal mood of worship. On a morning walk in Brooklyn, New York, he was talking about the challenges he faced in the first year, no disciples, and the one devotee said, but you were very determined, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, he said, no. He said, this Hare Krishna mantra is very powerful. And I guess that's another thing that I found very moving, is Prabhupada's arrival prayer. If you've heard it, I'm sure. You know, he starts off by saying, my dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me, but I guess you have some business. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? And I was a van leader, and I would have all the devotees in the van say the prayer before they would go out. And there's a certain part where it says, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you've brought me here to dance, then make me dance as you like. He signed, I have no knowledge, nor do I have any devotion, but I have a strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. And he signed it, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So that prayer always inspired me. Prabhupada was showing us what the proper mood of a preacher is. And it's not just some external thing, but that ideal preaching mood was contained in that arrival prayer by Srila Prabhupada. He's the ideal preacher, and that was his mood. And people coming after him had to have the same mood, because that's what a preacher's mood is: total dependence on Krishna, is trying to be the instrument, and feeling oneself very unworthy and unqualified. What he put up with, I mean, he was an eternal resident of the spiritual world. And he came and lived amongst the most fallen people in the Lower East Side of New York, in cooking for them, cleaning up after them, until gradually some devotees started coming forward and doing service. But his willingness to be in a situation with uncultured, but sincere, uncultured, low class people, and love them, and get them to love him, was only because of his compassion. And very few people could have done what he did.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu